The Xavier Lucas situation looks a mess and something that probably isn't good for Wisconsin. Or is it? I'm Rajeev. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome to the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajeev and Justin, back together on a Sunday. Yes, during the Packer game. Sorry, but I don't care about the NFL anymore after what happened to my Colts today. Yikes. Back together on a Sunday to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, the cornerback room is quite the topic of discussion these days as it sits fairly empty with a massive hole left behind by Xavier Lucas, who expressed his intent to enter the transfer portal and go to Miami. That's become quite the situation. Justin and I will tell you what we know and give you our takes. We'll talk about the room in general and who needs to be next through the door. While the Badgers are 0-2 in Big Ten Conference play in basketball, the conference slate goes into full swing, starting with the Iowa game on Friday. What's been the high and low of the season so far, and what will our final conference record be? We'll also touch quickly on the college football playoff. We are at the Bucky Report on Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you can find your podcast. If you like what we're doing, and you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. We appreciate that. And if you like the video, hit the like button as well. That helps with all the YouTube algorithm stuff and all those types of things anyway. Justin, how are you today? Let me just start by saying, yes, I'm sure many of you in the comments are going to be talking about the Colts. Yikes, bad game. Yes, I'm a Colts fan. Yes, I took off my Colts shirt already. It was a rough day. We gave up 45 points to the New York Giants. As far as I'm concerned, they all need to be fired. I'm over everything. I'm over all of it. I'm over the NFL entirely. But I think the Packers are losing too. Man, not the best day. Not the best day. How are you?
Hey, Wrexham won today, so I'll take that.
Yeah, well,
at least soccer won.
Mine didn't. So yeah, just a bad day for sports all around. Yeah, yikes. Justin, let's talk about Xavier Lucas. We'll jump right in. There's a lot of going on about with Xavier Lucas. As you all know, Xavier Lucas put his intent to enter the transfer portal. Wisconsin did not officially put him in the transfer portal. There's a dispute happening currently in regards to what specifically, we don't really know. But there's clearly a tampering charge, kind of a tampering thing with Miami. Looks like there could potentially be, either NIL agreements, contracts, all those things. We don't really know exactly what's happening. But what we do know is that it's not necessarily the best look for Wisconsin because now it's not currently in the national news, but I think it will eventually get there. I think ESPN will definitely pick this up the longer this goes. Because an example probably could be made out of this. But nonetheless, he is not transferred to Miami yet. He is in this really strange limbo period. So we're going to kind of get into all of that and talk through what our takes are, because it's a very interesting discussion. If you look at from the outside and looking in, what does it mean for Wisconsin? What does it mean for our recruiting going forward? And what does it mean for Xavier Lucas? Is he going to play here? Is he not? Do we want him to play here? Do we not? A lot of things to break down and unpack there. So Justin, we'll start there. What, from what you know about the Xavier Lucas situation and, what you've seen, what you've read, what is your take on the whole thing and how Wisconsin really should be proceeding at the present time?
In my opinion, if this is actually something that Lucas has screwed up, I am so over these athletes being able to just do whatever they want at this point. We've gone from one extreme to the other. We went from the schools to having all the control to the players having it. And now I want to see the strike back to get us to a balance in the middle. And at this point, if that's the case, and Lucas dug his own grave with this one, which is what sounds like happened, I'm sick of this. If you say you're going to do something to the team, to Wisconsin, which it sounds like is what happened here. He signed a contract with Wisconsin. I don't know the specifics, but it sounds like he signed something with Wisconsin and then decided to jump in the portal right away after that. And at that point, your word is your character. It's your integrity. And he just crapped on that. So I say stick it to him. I'm over it at this point. I know Wisconsin is going to take crap on this no matter what. Like, there's no way out of this where they're not going to look bad. I say at least the least you can do is try to do something to stabilize the marketplace, because it's not going to end well for you no matter what. So at least try to gain some respect back on the national perspective and say, this wasn't our screw up. This was on them. They tried to game the system and take advantage of it. And we're just doing what we're supposed to in this situation.
Yeah, I think you can really look at this a lot of different ways. So, I mean, from discussions I've had with some people inside the program, whether it be parents or players, things of that nature, I think there is a good amount of support from within the program that Wisconsin does dig their heels in, because there's a commitment level on both sides, right? Whether it's the university, the players, like there's a commitment, and if there's a commitment done and in writing, especially, then the commitment needs to be honored. But let's face it, the other part of this discussion, as Mark F. points out here, Wisconsin can win in court, but Lucas is winning in the court of public opinion right now. He's controlling the narrative. Bo Dragon says teams used to promise kids everything and not deliver. What's the difference? I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it. So my perspective is I kind of lean more towards the dig your heels in. I just do, because for a while, we talked, Justin and I've talked about this. We've talked to Ryan about this. Ryan, and I know I don't want to speak for Ryan, but he's kind of the opinion, like, ultimately this is a bad look for us. This is a bad look for our recruiting.
It already is.
Recruiting department going to be told, like, guys in South Florida or anywhere being, hey, you don't want to mess with Wisconsin. Like, look what happened to Xavier Lucas. And so I think that the more this story grows, the more that's a possibility that we could have negative recruiting effects from it. The other thing is, the more this story grows, Justin, is the more this kind of gets put in the limelight a little bit. And I know that it might not be what's best for Wisconsin, but I think it's really good for college football when this kind of thing happens and you have sort of the larger picture discussion that we have been talking about. Jim Mandel says this was bound to happen sooner rather than later. Difficult lessons for institutions, coaches, players. Transfer requires significant thought and evaluation of circumstance before proceeding. And I think that's kind of the thing, right? There's a larger thing that has to be talked about. So rules need to be put in place with contracts, with legislation that's coming up. Like, there's so much happening. And so I think that's the good thing for Wisconsin. The bad thing for Wisconsin is that, yes, it definitely can hurt us from a recruiting perspective. But I also think that principle matters. Principle and precedent really is important. And from talking to people inside, I think they're kind of saying, yeah, like we want Wisconsin's heels dug in. Ultimately, what matters is Wisconsin right? Do we have a leg to stand on? Is there a contract in place that said Lucas was gonna stay here, or is it something where Miami tampered clearly and there was a contract done outside of the contract that we had, or something like that? And there's so many legal ramifications. But if we're right, then I'm okay, Justin, with us standing our ground and saying that and taking the risk, because it is a risk. You're taking a recruiting risk by having people tell you that this is not, what you want to do. You don't want to go after guys that played for your program, because then people aren't going to want to come play for you in the future. And that is a valid argument. What is your take on that side of the argument? I mean, do you buy that at all? Are you hearing that argument?
I mean, my biggest perspective on this whole thing is I couldn't be more upset with the government getting involved in this whole thing to begin with, and effectively doing exactly what our government has a tendency to do, which is you're doing it wrong, and then providing zero guidance and just opening the floodgates to create the wild, wild west, when they could have set some type of, time frames on it where it's like, yeah, we admit that this is wrong. You need to put something in place by this date in order to be able to create an atmosphere that's more appropriate or conducive to the athlete. Instead, they just basically dropped it and washed their hands of it after they get involved with it. And of course, now look what we have. Now we have more chaos and probably more fraud and abuse than we had ever happening previously. And we're just looking at it like, cool, this is great. I'm so glad that you got involved with this and made a bigger problem than what we had before. You got involved to say that the athletes were being taken advantage of. And now what ends up happening is now there is effectively no legal ramifications for anything or anything associated with it, because a lot of this, how do we know how any of this is being tracked? We don't.
So how do you think recruits get affected by this? Do you think they're going to, do you think that now you're going to have people that we're targeting in South Florida or the South or anywhere really for that matter? Is this going to be negative, or is there enough goodwill inside the program from the guys because you're always talking to the recruits, right? Current players are talking to recruits. Like, do you think that becomes an issue? Because it is a very legitimate question. And I think that it's something that that needs to be talked about.
I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis. I don't think it from a bulk rule, and depending upon how the schools involved get associated with it, like the coaches may have a certain attitude towards this, but I don't know what you do in this situation. Like, theoretically, we know the player is the problem here. So how can you, like,
well, that
if you're the school, you have to come into this and basically be like, listen, we didn't want to hold him back. He actively did something inappropriate here. So we had, like, there were legal ramifications to how he handled this. It had nothing to do with Wisconsin doing anything to him. He did it to himself. And I think that at some point, Wisconsin has to get behind this and just show transparency and just say, this is what happened. Now, I realize they can't right now, probably because it's the legality issues associated with it. They're probably been told by their lawyers to not say anything.
Yeah, I mean, so we don't actually know if it was a player issue or a contract issue or someone in his orbit or something. We don't know because Wisconsin hasn't said their case. And frankly, nor has Xavier Lucas. It's not like he's coming out and giving a whole timeline. He's just saying he wants to go and he needs to be released. And Jeff Krause agrees, says we need to hear Wisconsin's side. Yeah, I'm a full favor of that. And here's the thing. The longer this goes, I think that will come out. I think eventually, if it becomes a larger story nationally, because this is like, eventually it's going to be, this is the example. Someone is literally being held out of the transfer portal. What's happening? Dig into it, ESPN, features, right? That can happen, which again, I'm okay with. And if that does mean that Wisconsin the whole thing gets put in the limelight and Wisconsin gets to tell their side of the story, so be it. Greg Linscomb asked, does Wisconsin have a smoking gun against Miami? We don't know, Greg. We think it sounds like Wisconsin did nothing wrong. That's what it sounds like. And that's from what we've talked to various people. That's what it sounds like. But we don't know because no one's actually telling it. Like, no one's actually come out and officially said anything. But it certainly looks like Wisconsin has a leg to stand on because, first of all, why would they be doing this if they didn't? Like, they're smart people.
My gut instinct on this is that if this goes to a legal case, that's where tampering can be pulled, because if they actually do discovery on this and look for evidence, that's where Miami's going to get caught, in my opinion. Like, if you start subpoenaing phone companies and stuff like that and getting involved with this to verify, was he contacted or was something put in place here outside of the window or before this player was in the portal, that to me is where you get the smoking gun against Miami. And that is where, if you get people involved in the law involved with this, they're going to figure this out. And this is where I do want to see, like, when we talk death penalty on this, I think you do make an example of the school in this case. It won't happen. Penalty. It won't happen, but I think that you need to put teeth in this. Like, you need to make it that if people are tampering and colluding, that there has to be a pick. You can't take draft picks, so you have to find a way to actually affect these teams in a manner that creates a negative impact on the team so that they won't do it. And financially, I don't know how you can do that. There's got to be something you can do, whether it be scholarships or whatever, that you say, if you get caught with this, we're going to crush you so that you don't do it. Because this is the only way it works to me. In the NFL, if it happens, you lose a first-round pick, that's a massive hit to your team.
And that's part of the discussion. Like, there has to be some ramifications. I agree, but the death penalty doesn't really work in sports anymore because the NCAA doesn't have teeth. So there's really not, they're not going to do that legally. You're not going to just cut a program like that. You're not going to do that as far as the death penalty.
Probably be financial penalties is what
it's exactly. It's probably because ultimately this is a professional sport now. So it's going to be financial penalty, and that's what exactly where it will go. But you're not, I mean, there's nothing that's going to be where they're going to lose bowl games. It's just ultimately,
that doesn't matter.
I heard, someone told me today, like they're someone that's close to the program said that in their opinion, Lucas either plays for Wisconsin or doesn't play at all next year. I mean, it's not Miami because there's that much legal issue here with what's happening. So that's what we don't know, right? And that's what I'm excited to find out because I want to know what's happening. But ultimately, you can definitely take the side of Wisconsin's going to look bad. Stop it now. It's lose-lose. And Ryan Willie had a comment about that earlier. I get that. If that's your opinion, that is totally valid. And I mean, ultimately, you're going to fall on one side of it, or you're going to fall on the side that, hey, look, we need to dig our heels in. I put up a poll on Discord earlier, the Locked On Badgers Discord, and I said, even if Wisconsin is in the right with this whole Lucas thing, what would you like the Badgers to do? One being dig your heels in, and if you're right and don't give in, try to get some compensation, but ultimately let him go, or give up now as it may negatively affect recruiting. All things can negatively affect recruiting. The winner by fairly close was actually the try to get some compensation, but ultimately let him go. But then right behind was dig your heels in and don't give in. I think that there is a lot of people are just kind of fatigued by everything with NIL. So I think it's the fact that someone is taking a stand. It's about that someone's going to take a stand and say, hey, like, we're not going to just let this go. I appreciate that. So that's where I personally land. I think that's where Justin lands. But if you land on the other side of that, put yourself in the comments, put your argument out there. I think it's a fascinating discussion because whatever happens, there's going to be some good that comes out of it. There's going to be some bad that comes out of it. We've just got to ultimately go forward with whatever it is that the program's going to do. So I can live with that. Any other thoughts you had on the Xavier Lucas situation before we move on?
I just think when it really comes down to it, there has to be something done with this. Like we need some type of governing body. If it's not the NCAA, fine. Like get a commissioner or whatever over the two primary conferences and set a mandate so you have something in place so that somebody is in charge of this, or whether it could be just a board. I don't care if there's a board associated with each of the, like a commissioner, all the commissioners from each of the conferences are the governing body. Whatever you choose to do, I don't care how you do it. Get somebody out there and agree on a stance on it. And it can be majority rule. And I don't care if the SEC gets screwed or the Big Ten gets screwed a little bit in order to make it happen. I just want some damn rules. I'm sick of it being this way, where we have players that are just like, they go to a place, commit for one day, then leave because somebody offered them 50 grand extra. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, get stuff and get it in writing, have a clearinghouse or whatever that actually makes sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, so you have everything in place and this stuff is all legal. Same thing with signing bonuses, same thing with anything under the table. I want it so that everything has to be accounted for and the bookkeeping happens, so that if a school does go outside of the rules, that's when you drop the hammer on somebody. And that, to me, is when it should happen. You find out somebody circumvented the system, dropped $100K to a player, crush them. But let's make it so that there's a system that they can do it within to do it correctly. And that's fine.
It's basically going to be a pro system. That's what it is.
And that's what it needs to be. Yeah. There needs to be rules, and there needs to be multi-year contracts and everything else. Like, a player can decide. If you only want to stay for 1 year at a place, sign a 1-year deal. If somebody gives you a multi-year deal, then recognize the fact that the atmosphere may change. It's going to be like a pro system where a head coach may get fired, but you're stuck there because you signed a 3-year deal. So be it. You got the what is the word I'm looking for? You have the security of having that 3 years. Regardless of who your coach is, your money is accounted for because that's the deal you signed. But for whatever's going to happen, that's the choice that you have to make. And in Xavier Lucas's case, if you wanted to go into the portal and figure this crap out, you should have done it from the beginning. Nobody forced you to sign the contract. Go in there and say, hey, I want to see what my value is on the open market, and then handle it that way. If you found out that somebody was willing to pay you more and this is the way you handled it, that's your mistake. This is why you don't sign a deal unless you're happy with what you're getting. Because there's always somebody that's probably going to pop up at some point that's going to say, well, I would have paid you more. Okay, well, too bad. It sucks. We see it in the NFL all the time. It's not typically the best quarterback in the league that has the biggest contract. It's whoever's signed the most recent one.
Badger Borman says everyone tampers. Nothing is going to happen to Miami. I agree. Everyone does tamper. I think the issue here might be that, that we had a legal agreement and they might have then put something else into place. Someone else might have taken money from them. And I think that's where it gets a little messy. But ultimately, I want to reiterate, we ultimately don't know. No one has made an official statement about what's happening. We've obviously all heard things. People talk to various people. There's a lot of things out there, but we don't know.
It's legal. I can tell you that the lawyers are telling Wisconsin not to say anything.
Right. And that's that exactly. And so ultimately, while we don't know, we can continue to speculate. But I think the more pertinent discussion to us really and to fans is like, what is going to happen with us? Like, how does this affect us long term? Right. How does this affect whether it's the recruiting, the whole system? Like they're going to battle this out and do whatever they need to. But there's a lot of opinion and takes on this in the comments here. So again, if you listen to this later, put it in the comments. Tell us what you think. We'll kind of hopefully talk about it again. I don't think this is going to be done soon. I don't think this is the last time we're going to be talking about Xavier Lucas. But the greater picture, though, Justin, is the cornerback room without Lucas and still without Holman officially back is a very light room, really bad at this point with pretty much just freshmen. And then we just got in.
I don't know if we can say it's bad. I think we can say it's inexperienced. I think we like some of the athletes that are in there, but it's definitely not up to the experience level that we're comfortable with.
Right. We did get a Jacksonville State transfer, Geimere. I don't know. Jameer. Do you know how to say
Geimere Latimer.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm bad about that. So Latimer, 5'10", 187, small guy. Not necessarily the kind of height that we are looking at some other guys in the portal. Thoughts on Latimer, Justin? How do you feel about this being our first sort of cornerback target?
Solid pickup. He's a depth piece. I mean, you're looking for somebody that has experience. He's a little undersized compared to what we're normally used to seeing. I think he's 5'10". Athletically, he's not what we've been bringing in the last couple cycles, which is fine. Like, listen, you're just trying to get people in there that you feel comfortable with. And I don't think that we had bigger issues on defense than the cornerback room last year. And I think that we can get by with a secondary that's a little less athletic if the front seven is actually decent, which is the bigger issue. Because it doesn't matter how athletic we are in the secondary if they have to cover for 10 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, I agree so far as Latimer goes. Not necessarily like a drop dead starter here. I mean, it's a depth piece that ultimately we love our starters to be Holman and Lucas, but that's not going to happen. Holman, hopefully, then we got to get someone on their side. A couple other guys have been mentioned in the last couple of days. Sasha Garcia to William and Mary, Dwight Lewis out of Marion. These are again depth pieces. Dwight Lewis has got some height, which is nice. I think he's 6'2", and so there's a lot of discussion about who we could get, but we don't have that. The transfer that we can sign players when we need to. The transfer portal is closing or closed soon. It's like you can't enter into it. It's closed. You can't enter into it anymore, but you can still get out of it. So ultimately though, I feel like we got Latimer. We need Holman to come back, and I think even after that, we need two more. Don't you think?
Yeah, from a body standpoint, I think I'd like two more experienced guys, whether they're going to play or not. I think that whoever you're bringing in, and this is where it's going to get tough for Wisconsin, because whoever's going to try and come in is going to be people that are like, well, I want to come in, I want guaranteed playing time. I don't think the caliber of athletes are out there in the portal right now that you look at and you say, I want to guarantee you playing time. I think there's a chance that you have guys like Harper and Agard that they're like, these guys are better than you. Maybe they don't have the experience, but athletically and from a technique standpoint, they might be ready to go and ready to play. You just don't feel confident not having somebody with experience in the room. And I think that might be where we end up with this. I think they might get a couple of guys where it's like, hey, we're going to give you a chance to compete, but I can't guarantee you anything. And I think there's a chance that Agard and Harper are the guys that end up rising to the top of this.
Why do you think those guys specifically?
Harper's very athletic and has a good frame. I think that he has a chance. The biggest knock I had on him in that class with Lucas and Agard was, I'm like, he's not as refined as the other two. Like there's talent there for him to be a really good corner. He's just a guy who's going to take a little longer to develop. Agard is the most advanced from a technique standpoint corner that I've seen since I've been following Badger recruiting. I think the biggest thing for him was, will he be big enough to play and hold up? And if Hallman can do it, I feel confident that Agard can. So I think the problem there is you look at it and you're like, do we really want two undersized corners that are technicians? Because you'd probably like to have at least one guy who's a little bit bigger, that if you need to change it up, you have somebody that's a little bit bigger frame that you can throw at a receiver.
I mean, can I say I wouldn't discount guys like Jameer Scott or Jamari Washington getting some playing time next year either. I think there is some of that. And
I think they'll be in the rotation for sure.
Yeah. Jeff Krause says we've lesser talented QBs come in and play as freshmen. So why not these kids? Yeah. I mean, look, I think that I think the narrative that, you know, this is all depth and we're going to hope some of the young guys really can show out. Yeah, that's a very fair point. But I still think we've got to get another starter, like a true bona fide starter at this position that can come in. Then it doesn't necessarily have to be Power 5. It can be Group of 5 type experience. It's got to be like, I've been the starter at a Group of 5 school. Fine. I've been the starter at a MAC school, or I was in the rotation at a Power 5 school. I'm okay with that, assuming that the guy could take a step up. But you need the experience in the room, and I'm a little nervous about how this is going to get filled. Not that I don't think we're going to get the bodies in. It's more I'm worried about the quality of the bodies, and I don't know that we're going to be able to get the qualities in. That's what's concerning me about the room is, are we going to get the quality guys in here to actually fill this spot? Or are we looking at potentially, as Ryan said last week, could potentially be a bad defense? Like, could be. I mean, we talked about the front seven. We talked about the guys getting bigger on the line, which they have. But is our pass rush that much better? Who knows?
So what I will say with this is my view on the defense in general is that I agree with him that the talent level hasn't necessarily spiked. What I will say is that I do think the pieces fit better. And that's where I think the difference is, where I think you could have a more cohesive group that it just makes more sense when you put the guys out on the field than what we had last year, and not have world beaters. Like, you might be better against the run. If the defense just gets better against the run, it changes things a little bit in general, because maybe you then feel a little bit better about turning some of the young guys loose on the edge as pass rushers in that situation. But when it's 3rd and 3 all the time, you don't want your guys out there that are not necessarily going to be assignment sure. You want guys out there that can play the run and are going to hold the edge and not necessarily get things up. Well, you have a little bit, if it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, you can feel a little bit better about putting those guys out there and saying, go get the quarterback.
Yeah, I mein, let me tell you something. If our rush defense gets better, my blood pressure will go down, because nothing bothers me more than that. Yeah, just that was a disaster last year. And listen, we wanted to get bigger. We got bigger. We have multiple 300-pound guys now that can play D-line, which I appreciate. I think that puts us in a better spot than we did last year. We didn't have that. So, I mean, we'll see how that goes. But look, the transfer portal is going to continue, and we're going to keep covering the portal. We're going to keep covering the Lucas situation. Certainly next week when we're on our show, if there's updates, we'll obviously bring them. We'll share with you what we know. And of course, the transfer portal, that's where we're looking. We're looking at the defensive backfield. Nothing else really matters right now than filling that cornerback room. Let's switch gears to the other sport. We did not get to this last week. We had wanted to talk about basketball, but we did not. So, you know, the Badgers finished the non-conference 10-1 in the non-con, which beat both of our expectations, by the way, Justin. 10-1. However, they are 0-2 in conference. Now, the Big Ten Conference officially kind of starts now. We're playing conference games through the end of the year. And I tell you our first 7. So our first 7 are Iowa, at Rutgers, Minnesota, Ohio State, at USC, at UCLA, Nebraska. Program note: if anyone listens to this is out on the West Coast or going to the UCLA game, I'm going to be at the UCLA game at Pauley Pavilion on the 21st of January. So hit me up if you're going to be at that game. Definitely interested in meeting up with anyone who would be there. So that'll be great. But so first, Justin, 10-1, not bad. Give me the high and low thus far of the season. Not necessarily the player, but what's the thing that you're happiest about? And what's the thing that you are basically the most disappointed about so far this season with the Badgers?
Well, I think the thing we have to be happiest about is Dirk Winter.
He's coming, baby. Winter is coming.
He's shown a lot of growth, and that's been big, because there's no other way to put it. He's just far more athletic than Krell is in the interior, which is a big deal for Wisconsin because you have some size that can actually move fairly well. And that's a big problem that they had with the interior of their defense. Not that he's going to be a guy that's going to go out there and block shots, but I think that he moves well enough that he can make people uncomfortable. I think the low we would have to say right now is honestly that Arizona game is like aging like milk right now. Like we thought like that was going to be such a big win in the moment. And now you look at it and it's like, man, what's wrong with Arizona this year? They're just not good. And there's a lot of talent on that team. It should be good. And maybe that rebounds yet. Maybe they get it together. But right now, Arizona's not looking pretty. And it would be nice if they could turn that into a quality win for us.
Yeah, so for me, I have a couple highs and a couple lows. The low, one of the lows so far is that we're 0-2 in conference, which is a really, really crappy way to start the Big Ten. Like the official Big Ten slate that's now 18 more games, that stunk. That's really bad. That's a big low for me. One of the other lows for me is really the play of Max Klesmit. I just haven't been happy with what I'm seeing out of him as far as his consistency. He is shooting the ball 28% from three. Max Klesmit is shooting 28%. Listen, you're not going to win a lot of games if Max Klesmit is shooting 20%.
It's a big sample size at this point too. We're a third of the way through the
big sample size. I mean, his total so far, he has taken 88 threes. 88 threes, and he's made 25 of them. That's not good enough. My highs, though, man, of course, like, first of all, John Tonje looks like one of the best transfers in the country. So that's really great. He's been such a nice bonus to us. And of course, Nolan Winter, he's averaging, I think, 11 points a game. He's obviously taking over a hole that we've had. Like we needed a big that could be athletic, like you said, that could play. He's done that. Now he's not the most physical, especially against a big physical five.
That will come with time.
That's going to come with time, but I give him a ton of credit. And let's give Mr. Country Club with the headband, Carter Gilmore, not without the headband. Carter Gilmore.
Does he have the headband stuff? I feel like that got to him.
Carter Gilmore has given this team so much this year. Incredible amounts of effort, a lot of hustle plays. He's, by the way, the guy happens to be shooting 27% from three. Listen, I'll take that from Carter Gilmore.
That's a substantial upgrade, isn't it, from last year?
And yes, and he's making key shots. He's doing it. He's not afraid. He's helping spread the floor. He's getting rebounds. The dude is actually playing really well. And we don't give him enough credit. He doesn't get enough credit throughout and that also goes for Kamari McGee. There's just been really good guys who are fighting for this team. And we are seeing some holes in Matt Klesmit's play. We're seeing some holes in Stephen Crowell's play. Blackwell hasn't always played the best. We need a little more out of him. There are some issues, but there's also a lot of players that deserve a lot of credit. And damn it, Carter Gilmore is one of them. What a great season that guy's having. He is having a great season.
Yeah, no argument for me there. I mean, we've always said Carter plays hard. You know, he just has his limitations. I mean, he's a walk-on player. People shouldn't be expecting him to play the role that he currently is, and yet he is doing a great job providing energy and grit on a team that badly needs those things. So I don't have a problem with it. I'm glad to see him experience some success because he does put a lot of effort into it.
Yeah. A couple comments here. Will Hanna says, I need more than a few game stretch to anoint Winter. Fair. Totally fair. I expect that we will, hopefully.
He could tail off, but you'd rather have this than not have it.
Is high for me so far is the game 13 year. Big Steve blocked a shot. There you go. I like that. This comment's great too. Dister 72 says, "Is there any Miami Hoops players we can trade for Lucas?" That's pretty good.
Well, I mean, Laurinaiga's leaving, isn't he? We got a shot at it.
Yeah, I mean, so look, I think there is a lot of good that's come out of this so far, but the 0-2 thing is an issue, which puts us square in, the bottom of the Big Ten at the present time. So Justin, Iowa on Friday. It's now the whole thing Friday night basketball, which is kind of cool, I suppose. At Rutgers, then Minnesota and Ohio State. We got 3 the next 4 at home. I think you got to win all 3 of those games. And I think you need to really set the tone here, because if we're going to hit any kind of level in the Big Ten that we need to be to get to the tournament and finish our season strong and not have the February dip, which you've certainly talked a lot about and we've seen often. We need to get things started off right in January, and that means winning some of these games just to kick off.
Well, I mean, when it comes down to it, what you can't have happen here is you can't let it avalanche, because we're going to be in a rough spot if suddenly we end up like 0-4 to start the season.
Yeah,
because that's going to be that's a deep hole to dig out of, and I think the Big Ten is good enough where that is a possibility. Like, they have to play well. If they don't play well, they will end up putting themselves in a spot where they're going to be in a lot of trouble.
I've been saying all year that the Big Ten's better than people give them the credit for. And
there are a lot of teams that they closed up holes that they had from last
season. I think the Big Ten is a very good conference basketball-wise, and we've lost to two good teams. Michigan and Illinois are two tournament teams. Mm-hmm. They will be tournament teams. They are good teams. One of them was at home. That's a killer in the Michigan game. But losing at Illinois is not – when Illinois is the second game on your schedule, most teams are going to Illinois and losing. You're not winning that game. And Michigan's got some really good players. But the key is now we're playing Iowa at Rutgers. That's a road game, fine. Minnesota and Ohio State. You got to win those games. Iowa, Minnesota, Ohio State have to be wins. Not just because they're teams that we're really better than, but because we're playing home Big Ten games. Yeah. You get 10 of each, and we're already 1-1. And 0-2. We're 0-1 at home and 0-1 on the road. We've got to win our home games because there are road games on this schedule that we are going to lose. And And I think, and I've said this every year, you got to get to 10 conference wins if you want to make the tournament. Period. End of discussion. You got to bank on that. You can maybe do it for less, but if you get to 10, you're getting in. I do not believe for 1 second that a 500 conference team doesn't get into the tournament, especially in our conference. So 10 wins, which means we need 10 of our next 18. So you've got to start racking these up now. And we've got to really get that done. What do you think, Justin, is a realistic target for us to get to? Like, I say we need to get to 10. Where do you think, what's a target that we really need to be shooting for?
I realistically think that they need to find a way to probably get to, what do we play, 20 Big Ten games?
20, yep.
So I think they need to find a way to get to 10-10, 11-9. I think it's going to be hard to get in the tournament if you're under 500. That's typically kind of been the rule of thumb. If you're under 500, you're probably not going to in. So they have some work to do. Like, these games being home games and against kind of the mediocre teams in the Big Ten. Like, this, we're playing the middle of the Big Ten standings coming up here. Wisconsin has to find a way to get these games, especially with them being home games, because if they lose these, there's, like I said, there's a chance this avalanches, and there's a chance that they're completely out of the NCAA tournament by start of February. Like, if you're 1-6 or 1-7 in the Big Ten, you're probably done, because you're not going to get back out of that. Like, it's going to be so hard to dig back out of that kind of hole. You cannot afford to blow these games at home that are winnable games.
For sure. Stringing wins together is an absolute must. And we've got we definitely have a winnable stretch here where I think we can really sort of focus on what we're doing and get that. I wanted to pull up the schedule here just so I can see beyond that a little bit. And there it is. Yeah. So Iowa, Rutgers, Minnesota, like I said, Ohio State. The at USC, at UCLA game is going to be tough, but then it's a tough stretch where we're at USC, and UCLA, home to Nebraska, the return of Mr. Asigian, of course, and then another 2 road games, Maryland and Northwestern. So we've got a lot of road games kind of sandwiched together throughout the months of January and February, but we're gonna have to get these early ones because, as you said, we're 1-5, 1-4, 1-5. We're not doing anything. So Iowa, Minnesota, Ohio State got to get. Rutgers is definitely a winnable game on the road as well. So I think that those are ones you got to get. Let me ask you this, Justin. So first of all, for me, I think the target is 12. That's what I always like to shoot for. 12-8 really puts you in the top 5 to 6 in the conference. That's going to probably be this year. It goes right if what happens? What do we need to do for this year, the rest of the season to get to that above 500, as you said, to get in the tournament? What has to go right for that to happen?
Well, they need to rebound well, which is something that they've struggled with this season. And defense in general has to be better because I think we've seen that the offense has been somewhat inconsistent. You have 2 players that are typically pretty high efficiency in Tanjay and Blackwell. The problem is that teams have realized that those are your guys. So they're scheming to take those two guys away, and other people have to pick up the slack. Klesmit's not doing it right now. Like, if he can come around, it would go miles to helping this team be better than what they currently are, because I don't think you can lean on Winter right now to be this every game. And I just think that we don't have any clue what Crowell's going to do. Like, he's just all over the place right now from a production standpoint. And he's really hard to look at and be like, okay, well, am I going to get 4 points and 3 rebounds, or am I going to get 17 and 7? Like, he's so hard to figure out what you're going to get game to game, that you need to figure out the guy who you can probably consistently rely on is Klesmit when he's clicking on all cylinders, and he's not right now. So you got to find a way to get him back.
Yeah, agreed. Klesmit's got to shoot. We've got to, for me, we've got to simply shoot better from 3, and we will win more games. As a team, we're not shooting that great from 3 right now compared to where we sort of thought we were going to be, and that's mainly because of Klesmit. There's no doubt about that. But Blackwell hasn't been where he was supposed to, kind of, certainly where he was. He wasn't where he was last year.
What, mid-30s?
So Blackwell right now, and I just went to the other screen, but I will get there. Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately that the 3-point shooting has got to improve, because we just can't be as effective down low consistently. I mean, obviously Crowell has his days and Winter is having a lot of them, but we can't get it as consistent as we want it. So it's really important that we do from there. So he's Blackwell 28% as well, 29%. Tanjay's at 37, so that's fine. Winter's at 34, that's fine. But Stephen Crowell, 23%, Max Klesmit, 28%, John Blackwell, 29%. The team is at 32. That's got to be at 35. It's got to be 35 plus.
Oh, absolutely.
Because
we've got to be near the bottom of the country right now in 3-point shooting.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I don't want to look it up right now. But
low
yeah,
30s
I mean,
is a very low number.
It's not good. It's not good. When your best shooter is 28%, that's not good. So on the contrary to that, what it goes wrong and I think you said it, rebounding, like if we don't get better at rebounding, some of these other teams in the conference are going to light us up from on the boards, and we're going to struggle. But I really think that if we see Tanjay continue to get smothered, which he's going to, right? He's going to get that sort of like that best player, that Johnny Davis type of, like defense. So if he gets that, and if Blackwell and Klesmit or Winter can't really make big strides, and I'm talking about taking things over, I think things can go wrong quickly. I don't expect them to, though. I like how deep this team is. I like how the bench is playing. I think Kamari McGee does a lot for us from an engine perspective. So I think there's a lot of pieces that allow us to be successful. I do think we're going to get to 10 wins in the conference. And I think that maybe hopefully up more than that, but I think 10 will get us in. And we're going to struggle at times, Justin, but I do believe in this team. Honestly, because I just need something to believe in right now, because my football teams have been disastrous. My soccer team's having a rough time. And I'm a 4 team, like there's 4 teams that I don't miss a single game. And Badgers football and basketball are 2 of them. And I need something from the basketball team. But I do think we get to 10. I mean, I think this team is good enough to get into the tournament. I've said that. And I think they're going to surprise some people. I think we're going to lose some games that we shouldn't lose. But that's always going to happen. And that's never not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, again, it's rebounding and it's interior defense, which is something that I think that's kind of this team's biggest weakness from a defensive standpoint. They're just not very good at cutting off penetration. And they just don't. The size isn't useful size defensively in terms of being able to make people uncomfortable when they attack. It'll be really interesting to see, because when we talk about the Big Ten, it's better than we thought. I think there's a lot of parity. There's not a couple of teams that you look at there like these are 2 dominant teams in the conference. It's just a lot of teams that if you don't bring your game, you're going to lose. And that's kind of where it is. Wisconsin has to play well. They don't have to be perfect, but they have to play well in these games or they will lose the games, because every team that they play in the Big Ten this year is going to be somebody that if they don't come to play, they're going to probably lose. Even if it's a close game, it's still a loss. But there's nobody that you look at that you're like, that's a win, except maybe Minnesota. They're terrible.
Well, I mean, look, we need to do something. And we have to, like I said, I think this is a 10-win team. We have experience. That's what I was going to say. There's a lot of experience on this team. So experience matters, and especially matters as we progress through the season, and hopefully we can get that going. So I'm going to say 11 is my final prediction for the Big Ten season, 11-9, which puts us at 10 losses overall. Where are you at on your official Big Ten record?
I'm going to say 8-12.
Wow. You just don't believe in this tournament. You think we're missing the tournament?
I am seeing some warning signs with this team that when you see how they played against Michigan and you see how they played against Marquette and you see how they played, this team doesn't do well with physicality. And they're not the most skilled team out there. So there's going to be some teams that are going to carve them up a little bit if they're more athletic. I think they lean too heavily on Tanjay and Blackwell to start the season, and now they're kind of having a little bit of an identity crisis, trying to figure out other ways to do everything. So I'm a little worried that they may cough up a couple more games here, and then they'll finally get rolling and play 500 ball the rest of the year.
Okay.
Which is not bad. It's just not probably going to get it done.
Okay. It's fair. Well, we're going to learn a lot. I mean, we got it must win, by the way. I mean, all of a sudden, the first Big Ten game of the new year is a must win because we're already 0-2. So Iowa on Friday, which is going to be a big one for sure. So first of all, I wanted to say, if those of you who were able to join the Locked On Badgers giveaway show, hopefully you guys got some of you in this chat already did win a couple things. So thank you for joining us on that. Happy New Year to all of you. Merry Christmas, all of you. Hope everyone had a good holiday season. Let's switch gears quickly in our last segment, Justin, to the CFP. We've been wanting to talk about the playoff, and we just haven't got a chance to talk about it yet. So I'm just to quickly touch on it. First of all, who are you rooting for right now, and who do you want to win the CFP, and where do you stand on Big Ten rooting? Because I have very strong feelings about this.
I hate Notre Dame, but I do want to see them beat Georgia, just because I'm so tired of the SEC playing this narrative that they're better than everybody. And you know what? I already know how the narrative is going to play out on this. They're going to say, well, we lost our quarterback. And it's like, well, last year Florida State didn't even get to play in the playoff without their quarterback. So suck it up. This is you guys feel like you should be there. So be it. Texas is kind of experiencing some similar things with Ewers. He's struggling a little bit there too with his health. They have more depth. But the way I kind of look at this, I would like to see any of the Big Ten teams win it. I would prefer it not be Penn State. But
God, seriously.
But I think it would do a lot in terms of throwing some balance back to college football if we won back-to-back from the Big Ten standpoint. Because then people will kind of look at it like, is the Big Ten the new, big team on the block? Maybe they are, because the more we look into it this postseason, SEC kind of stinks. They're blowing bowl games. They're just not overly impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to see the SEC go down. Yeah, so I agree on the SEC. Texas and Georgia losing would be perfectly fine with me. So I was one of the ones that rooted against Indiana. I generally am a huge pro Big Ten guy, and I always root for the Big Ten game, especially in bowl games. Even I would have rooted for Indiana too. Indiana making the CFP just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. We've been a much better historical team than this team. They've had the most losses of anyone on any college football program ever of all time. And they got into the first CFP, and I was just jealous, truthfully. That's why I didn't want Indiana to win, because I didn't want a team from where I'm from to have that. Yeah, I'm from Indiana. I didn't want that to happen. But the rest of the Big Ten I did root for. Penn State, I struggle with because I just hate Penn State, and I don't want to see them really have a thing. But I'm absolutely rooting for the winner of the Oregon-Ohio State game. I'm really pissed off, by the way, that Ohio State lost that game to Michigan, because I think they're the two best teams in the country.
Oh,
and
they are.
Sad that they're playing in the quarterfinal. I don't like that. That should not have happened. I think the committee should have recognized that Ohio State had a bad game. I mean, there's a lot of teams. Georgia's there's a lot of teams.
Tell me they didn't take a look at that and say, like, this the way we have this laid out is stupid.
I mean,
based off what we've watched this season, you can take a look at what you have there and kind of be like, yeah, no, this doesn't make sense. Like, Penn State shouldn't be playing, over a Boise State over like Ohio State. Like that's the bracket that Ohio State probably should have. And they'll be like, well, they have 2 losses. Okay, well, Penn State didn't exactly play a juggernaut of a schedule either. So They played Oregon in the title game, and they played, during the regular season, Ohio State, who they lost to. So, in my opinion, they probably should have been ahead of Penn State.
In Georgia has 2 losses. They lost to Georgia Tech, but they're the number 2 seed. And I understand they won their conference, so they're going to get one of those 4. I get all that. I understand the seeding. I just don't like that the 2 best teams in the country at this point really, truly likely are Ohio State and Oregon. They're playing each other in the Rose Bowl, which, by the way, that's going to be a great game. I'm rooting for Ohio State in that game, by the way. I don't want Oregon in their first season to win it. But if Oregon moves on, then I want Oregon to win it.
How gratifying was it to see Tennessee get blown off the field against them?
Yeah, and of course, the narrative immediately, well, Tennessee, that's fine, but Indiana should never have been there. I don't even like Indiana. I didn't want them in there, but don't talk shit about the Big Ten. I'm always going to fight back if you talk about the Big Ten.
I put my view out there online of anyone that follows me on Twitter. It's not hard. This isn't complicated. We can look at this and say that the ceiling for Alabama and the ceiling for Ole Miss is probably higher than Indiana. Guess what? Their floor is lower too. Because what Indiana didn't do, they didn't cough up games against teams with losing records. You had a 6-6 Vanderbilt team and a 4-8 Kentucky team. 4-8 Kentucky team took out Ole Miss, and the 6-6 Vanderbilt team and a 6-6 Oklahoma took out, which is now 6-7 Oklahoma after they lost their bowl game to Navy, took out Alabama. So shut up. This isn't complicated. You guys are whining, complaining about everything. Stop losing games to crappy teams, and you'll be in the playoff. It's not complicated.
Yeah, I don't have any problem.
The shitty teams. It's not hard.
I don't have any problem with who made it into the playoffs.
No, neither do I. This is stupid.
There was a comment up here. Eric Doherty says, "You can't hate the whole state." Yes, Eric, I can't hate the whole state of Pennsylvania because I've never liked the Steelers because of what they've done to my Colts over the years. I don't like the Eagles because I just lost a bet with one of my colleagues who's an Eagles fan, and I hate that. So now I got to wear an Eagles shirt for some stupid online
half
meeting.
The Steelers team is Wisconsin.
I don't like Pennsylvania. I like the people of that state, Eric, but I don't like the teams in that state. Badger and Borman says Ohio State should have beat Michigan. Boo-hoo for Ohio State. Yeah, I hear that argument completely. I just think for the neutral looking at this, I wish those 2 teams played not in that game. So who do you think wins it, Justin? And who are you officially rooting for, and who do you think wins it?
I think that when push comes to shove with this, I typically look at the quarterback. I think Dylan Gabriel might be the best quarterback that's in the field. I just think that with the speed they have at wide receiver, it'll be interesting because if I was going to take an approach to this game, I would play the way Iowa plays teams on defense and basically be like, we're not going to let you play anything behind us. Everything's staying in front of us. We're going to make you have to nickel and dime it down the field, and that's how we're going to make you win this game. If we have to play this to a 28-27 kind of game, then so be it. But we're not going to turn this into a track meet and let you just spring guys because we're playing man up, because that would be the wrong way to play against Oregon, because their speed on the outside is going to be a problem. Yeah.
I'm rooting for Ohio State. Because they're the Big Ten team that I think honestly, I think they're the best team in the country. Whoever wins that game on the Rose Bowl, I'll definitely be rooting for them. I think Ohio State wins the national title. I just better not. We'll see. It would be kind of interesting to see a Big Ten one like Ohio State, Penn State, but that would just Penn State fans are really going to annoy me, man. Yikes.
Wouldn't it be just fun because of Ohio State fans have to deal with the fact that Ryan Day won them a title, but yet they lost to Michigan, and now they have to reconcile the fact like their feelings are so twisted.
I've heard so many people like JR from he's an Ohio State guy in the Big Ten huddle, and I just heard so many Ohio State fans, not him specifically, but other people have said I don't care about what happens now. We lost to Michigan. I don't care what happens. I don't want to win the national title. BS. You do want to win the national title, and you'll deal with it. And you're gonna shove it to Michigan if you do, because they won it last year. You do want to win it. Yes, you lost to them. Deal with that, but whatever. I mean, that's just crazy. We'll wrap up the show there. Thanks for joining us. We had a great discussion on Xavier Lucas today, so go back and listen to that if you joined us late. A lot to unpack there. Ultimately, a lot going on. We will keep talking about this. If there's any new information that we get, we will certainly pass it on. Go check out the Locked On Badgers Discord. We're always in there too, talking about the good stuff. So a lot of things happening. Any final thoughts, Justin, before we close the show?
Yeah, I'm ready for spring ball. I just want to get past all this nonsense with the transfer portal and just move on to talking about what the roster is and where we're going. Wisconsin probably needs another quarterback yet. It'll be interesting to see what they do there. I don't know who you pick up because you're obviously not getting somebody that's probably going to start, but you need a body because you can't go into the season with three scholarship quarterbacks. Like that's begging for something to go sideways and be in it's just an awful position. You have to have at least 4 guys.
I'll just end the show with a comment that I made similar to the beginning of the show, which is ultimately I understand the arguments on both sides of the Xavier Lucas thing. I totally hear people that are like, we need to just move on. It doesn't look good. But I will say there is something to principle here. And I do want to know what happened. Eventually, I want that to come out. I want us to get compensated for whatever we need to get compensated for, whatever agreement was there. And the thing that I want most out of this is for this to be the Kickstarter of a national discussion that figures out the final rules, that puts regulations in place, that has contracts. I want this revenue share thing to go forward coming up soon to really make it more transparent, to open it up. The players deserve to be paid. I'm in full favor of that. Also, they're pro athletes if that's going to happen. So let's treat them like that. Let's make sure that the controls are there. I'm all for them getting paid, and I'm glad they are because for too long, college has made way too much money off the backs of the athletes who weren't getting paid. So I'm all for that. But let's make the controls in place.
It needs to have controls in place.
We need to enjoy the sport. I want to go back to enjoying the sport the way that I've always have. Right now, it's tough, but I think Wisconsin can get through it. Let's get cornerbacks in for sure.
I want to throw a name out here for quarterback too, and I want to get your thoughts on it real quick because I think he's a guy who kind of fits what we're looking for. If he chooses to go into the portal, Lincoln Kienholz from Ohio State. He's somebody Wisconsin was chasing after previously. Doesn't have any starting experience, but I think if you could sell him on the fact that hey, we have a guy who's in here for 1 year, and then the room is basically open going into next year. I think he's a guy who's like a redshirt sophomore or a redshirt junior.
Sophomore, I think.
Yeah, he might be sophomore. So the way I look at it is get somebody like that in there who you can maybe sell on. Like you're going to have an opportunity in a room that's not so stacked that you may be able to take this and run with it next year.
Maybe. I think ultimately any guy like that, though, it's just going to be tough because you brought in a transfer guy, Danny O'Neal. You'll have a guy like Carter Smith that everyone's talking about. And you don't have Mabry anymore. But yeah, I think maybe we could see that. I'm okay if it goes as it is. I don't think you necessarily have to get another guy, but we'll see. And I think, look, here's what I would say. We can do it in the spring. Like I think we can figure out because in the spring, when the portal opens again, there's going to be some people that after spring ball are leaving their current school because they're not in that competition. Maybe that means I don't think anyone from our school is going to leave. I think now that Mabry's gone, Danny O'Neal's going to stay. We know we got Billy Edwards. We know we got Carter Smith. So I think we can get someone in the spring. There's no need to get him right now. Right now, just focus on the secondary. I'm okay without getting a quarterback at the present time. To answer your question, would I take him if he enters the portal? Sure, I would. There's potential there. He's an Ohio State quarterback for a reason. So, like, I think I'm never going to turn down another body to compete with Carter Smith and Danny O'Neal, but I think we can wait to see kind of what happens in the spring portal. But, all right, with that, we will see you all again next week. Thanks for joining us. Hit the like button if you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're not already done so. With that, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.